Good evening and welcome to the second annual Heterodox Academy Open Inquiry Awards dinner. So we're gathered here tonight to confer these six beautiful awards on six very worthy people. And after Deb and I confer the awards and read brief citations about them, we're so fortunate that we have one of America's greatest and most heterodox thinkers in the entire country, David Brooks, will be speaking to us after dinner. So I'm just going to set the stage briefly for the rest of the evening. And as I understand it, food will just be served constantly while I'm talking. Not the optimal arrangement, but I guess logistically it's what has to happen. So okay, here we go. I co-founded Heterodox Academy in 2015 with Chris Martin and Nick Rosenkrantz. Chris is here somewhere. Where's Chris? Where is he? Someone point. Okay. And as Deb said earlier, it just began as three guys with a blog. It was just three professors who had each written academic papers about a problem in their own fields. And that problem in all three cases, in social psychology for me, sociology for Chris, and legal education for Nick, was that when everyone's on the same team and there's not a lot of pushback, the quality of the work suffers. These were not political tracts. These were not moral arguments. They were just like sociology of science, quality of research arguments. And we each read each other's papers. We decided, hey, we should get together. We should keep some attention on this. And it was entirely a faculty issue. It had nothing to do with undergraduates, nothing to do with campus climate. But we happened to buy the website name and put up the site, and it went live on September 15th, 2015. And then that fall, the fall of 2015 was the fall when there were all the protests, the Halloween protests at Yale. That is the semester when everything changed on campus. And so in response, over time, Heterodox Academy changed too. It really was originally just about improving faculty diversity to improve the quality of research. But as it became clear that the problem is actually a lot bigger, a lot more complicated, and it has 7 or 10 different roots all feeding together. It's an amazing time to be a social scientist. I would say it's the best time since the 1930s. We have an enormous number of problems that we're trying to understand. So on the one hand, I'm completely terrified about some large social trends. On the other hand, I and a lot of people studying this and a lot of people in Heterodox Academy were incredibly invigorated because we were given a challenge in our time, a challenge to figure out, as Deb said earlier, there's nothing, paraphrasing Bill Clinton, there's nothing wrong with the academy that can't be fixed with what's right about it. And this is the challenge of our time, to figure out what's going on and then to act in ways that restore the integrity, the dynamism, and the trust of the American people in the academy. As Lynn said earlier, that trust has dropped precipitously. So let's see. So I was the director of Heterodox Academy for its first 2 years, and the most important thing I did, by far the best thing that I did, was realize that this job was way beyond me, and I need to hire somebody who really can do it as it grew so much larger. So the best thing I ever did was to hire Deb Mashik. Now Deb is remarkable in so many ways. She was willing to leave a job as a full professor of psychology at Claremont McKenna. Hardly anyone does that, leaving a tenured position. I'll tell you right now, tenure is really, really nice. Like, there are arguments against it, but it's like amazing to have it. And the fact that Deb was willing to leave such a position. Now, she was already a member of Heterodox Academy. And then when I posted the job advertisement and she saw it, she had already begun to see some disturbing trends at Harvey Mudd College and around the country. And so she saw this opportunity to really make a difference in higher education. And that's the thing about Heterodox Academy. People sometimes get us wrong. They think we must be, critical of the academy. We must be some political group, but we're not. We're 3,000 insiders who love the academy and want to make it better. So Deb took over she took over in January of 2018. She took over part-time or half-time, finished her work at Claremont McKenna, and then she moved out here 1 year ago. And it's amazing what has been accomplished, what she has accomplished in 1 year. And I won't go through the list of achievements, but the fact that we are now this large, we have a much larger network of supporters, we have much greater impact, we are changing the nature of discussion on campus, the terms that we use, even just the idea that intellectual diversity is an important kind of diversity. That's now much more common than it was 1 year ago. Deb, she said this morning that she's putting, one of the main things she's been working on is putting the organs in the organism, really giving us a structure. But from my perspective, now that I'm stepping back, Deb gave us something even more important, which is that she gave us a moral center, which we call the HxA way. This was Deb's term, the Heterodox Academy way. And it means a way of moving through a volatile world with habits of heart and mind that enable constructive engagement across lines of difference. It means being curious and intellectually humble, being constructive, not sarcastic. It means welcoming and embracing critics because they make you smarter. So that's what we're all about. That's what we think the Academy should be about and is about at its best. Now, passing the leadership on to Deb has given me the luxury of getting out of the daily issues of running an organization in a very complicated time and finishing writing my book, The Coddling of the American Mind, with Greg Lukianoff. And as I wrote that book, and then as I've been traveling around the country in the last 7 or 8 months speaking about it, I've learned a lot. And what I think I'd like to do in just the next few minutes, I'll just give you 3 things that I think I've learned, 3 things that I think will be of interest to this audience, and then we'll confer the awards. So the first point I want to make to you, the first thing I've learned, is that the mental health crisis is larger and it's more central to the problems we face on campus than any of us had realized back in 2015. When Greg first came to me and said, John, I'm seeing these patterns of distorted thinking, exactly the patterns that I learned to stop doing when I was trained in CBT. This is Greg talking now. When Greg first diagnosed the problem about bad thinking on campus, distorted thinking, depressive thinking, we didn't know that there was an epidemic of depression and anxiety sweeping the country. Our original idea was that colleges were somehow teaching students to think that way, but that wasn't right. What was happening was that Gen Z was arriving on campus right around 2014, and that changed everything. And we didn't know it then. We didn't know that's what was happening. So rates of depression and anxiety, and only depression and anxiety, nothing else, just depression and anxiety, began skyrocketing around 2012. There are a lot of reasons for that. The 2 main ones are the vast overprotection that we put on kids in the 1990s. We literally stopped letting them out. We thought that we were keeping them safe, but in fact, we were preventing them from developing the skills of handling risk and handling conflict that are essential for success in life. We began depriving kids systematically of that in the 1990s. So that's one reason, and the other reason we believe is social media. When kids get on it too early, it really affects them, especially girls. So the mental health crisis is gigantic. I think this is going to be one of the biggest stories of the next few years. This is everywhere. This is every school, doesn't matter rural, urban, doesn't matter if it leans left or right. This is a national problem. And that's why we think that actually social media and overprotection are probably the two main ones. So that's one thing I've learned, and if you haven't seen this yet, it's going to impact you. The second thing that I've learned is that the threats to open inquiry that Greg and I first diagnosed on college campuses in our coddling article, which turned into the book, that these threats are not confined to college campuses. In fact, they've moved out beyond college campuses in 3 important ways. First, they've moved down into high schools. And when I talk to people, not all high schools, but especially more elite private high schools, especially in the Northeast and the West Coast and more politicized parts of the country. Well, I shouldn't say it that way. So these issues on campus are becoming really intense in high school. High schools really need to work both on depression, anxiety, and also on ways of fostering open inquiry. At Heterodox Academy, we've developed several, including the Open Mind program at openmindplatform.org. That's now an independent organization. So this is a problem throughout secondary education as well. The second way it's moved out is that it's moved out to other countries, at least to every country that speaks English. So really, really bad ideas can now triumph if people are afraid to challenge them. And because of social media, they can spread laterally instantly. So the same problems that we're seeing on American campuses are happening in very similar form in Canada, the UK, and I'm just learning now, I'm going to Australia in a few weeks, and I'm having people do research there, same thing there. It's not so much on continental Europe, perhaps because of the language difference, but it is throughout the Anglosphere. And the third way that these problems are moving off campus is that they're moving out into businesses. Gen Z just began graduating 1 year ago. And so businesses have only just begun to hire them, and nobody yet knows how to integrate them. Now, I don't mean to make it sound like, invasion of the body snatchers and there's the Zika virus. I mean, these are, my kids are Gen Z. A lot of you have kids in Gen Z. They're sweet kids. They're nice kids. We just never gave them the chance to develop the skills that they need to function effectively in college. And so that's why what we're doing here is so important. We've got to shed light on this, find ways to reverse course. I just want to share with you two quotes from the business people I've spoken to recently. The CEO of an online retailer, when I always bring this up, I always say, so, do you have any new employees that graduated from college recently? And they say, oh, yeah, we do. I say, how's that going? One of them said, quote, my recent college grads, some of them come in primed for confrontation. So life is just much more difficult. You're trying to develop a group, you want team players. Life just gets much more difficult. And here's a quote from the director of a major American museum. Quote, it's exhausting. I don't know how much longer I can do this job. So Heterodox Academy is not just addressing the problems of higher education. We're addressing some of the most important challenges facing any organization in the early 21st century. We have to find ways to live and work together across lines of difference. In a time of rising outrage and declining trust, we have to prepare students to do so after they graduate. So the HxA way is a pretty good thing to teach. The third and final point I want to make about what I've learned recently is that even though the problems are spreading in the way that I just said, support for our mission is spreading too. So in 2015, when Greg and I published our Atlantic article, when I'd travel around, professors would say to me, oh, come on. You're reacting to anecdotes from 3 schools. Come on. This is just an isolated cases. There's a lot of skepticism. Now when I travel around, I don't get that skepticism. When you get professors talking over lunch and you bring up these issues, either everyone has a story or someone close to them has a story where they thought doing their job and suddenly they get in trouble for teaching or for lines of inquiry that they thought were what they were supposed to be doing. So now there's a much broader acknowledgement that we've got to work together in higher ed to solve these problems and to regain the trust of the public, as Lynn talked about this afternoon. We're also now having a lot more success talking to donors across the political spectrum. In fact, just in the last couple of months, we've gotten grants from the Ford Foundation and the Templeton Foundation. Thanks. So there's growing support for our mission, and there's growing interest in our work. There's growing recognition that people who stand up for civility and open inquiry are heroes. And that brings us to tonight's program. So one of the features of Heterodox Academy, especially under Deb's leadership, is that we try to use praise, not shame. There are so many media outlets out there that are devoted to shaming higher education, but consistent with the HxA way, we don't do that. We identify schools and people who are doing the right thing. We call attention to them. We recognize what they're doing, and we hope that that recognition will encourage others to do so as well. So with that prologue, we now have 6 awards to confer. I'm going to introduce the first 3, and then Deb will do the second 3. So the first award is the Award for Exceptional Scholarship. It is awarded to an academic who, through research or another form of scholarship, has greatly contributed to the understanding of open inquiry, viewpoint diversity, and constructive disagreement. And this year's award goes to Keith Whittington. Keith, where are you? Where's Keith? Okay, we'll call him up in a moment. So Keith is the William Nelson Cromwell Professor of Politics at Princeton. His recent book, Speak Freely, Why Universities Must Defend Free Speech, makes the case for why freedom of expression is integral to what universities are and to the roles that they're supposed to play in our society. The fundamental mission of the university, he argues, is to advance and disseminate knowledge. Consequently, the ultimate goal of a university community must be, quote, to foster an environment in which competing perspectives can be laid bare, heard, and assessed. In such a community, quote, unorthodox, controversial, and even wild-eyed professors should be valued and regarded as signs of institutional health rather than being subject to harassment, intimidation, or formal sanction. And we have a number of wild-eyed professors here today, so I hope they'll be especially pleased about this award. Princeton University's president, Christopher Eisgruber, assigned the book as a pre-read for all incoming freshmen, making Princeton the only school I know of to have assigned a pre-read book that actually will prepare them for open inquiry on campus. May many more schools follow Princeton's example. May millions of students hear Keith Whittington's ideas. Please join me in congratulating Keith Whittington.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Why don't you come to the middle?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Okay, our second award is the Leadership Award. This is, quote, awarded to a person or group that has shown exceptional leadership in championing open inquiry, viewpoint diversity, and constructive disagreement in the academy and beyond. This year's award goes to Jonathan Zimmerman. John is a professor of education and history at the University of Pennsylvania. His research explores the politics of education and how controversial issues are taught. John was one of the founding members, one of the first members of Heterodox Academy. He was featured in our very first podcast episode. But John was actually a one-man Heterodox Academy long before we ever existed. His book titles tell the story. From 2002, Who's America? Culture Wars in the Public Schools. From 2016, Campus Politics, What Everyone Needs to Know. And his most recent book, The Case for Contention, Teaching Controversial Issues in American Schools. Throughout John's career, he has defended colleagues who have come under attack, whether from administrators, students, or the general public, and he defends people regardless of their politics, on the left and on the right. Throughout his teaching career, he's asked his students tough and provocative questions, and then he helps them acquire the skills to answer those questions. In short, Jonathan Zimmerman is the complete package on every front: research, teaching, institutional advocacy, and public engagement. He is an exemplar of how to promote open inquiry, viewpoint diversity, and constructive disagreement. So please join me in congratulating John Zimmerman. Here, from the center? No, you're in the center. You're from the center. Yeah. Okay. Thanks again. Okay, our third award is the Courage Award. This is awarded to individuals who have shown consistent courage in pursuing truth despite social and professional costs. Now, this year, unfortunately, there were many candidates. But this year we chose Sam Abrams because he's been so consistent in his devotion to his duties as a professor, even as his very devotion has caused him to become a target of attack, facing a very high personal cost. Now, there are many professors who are conservative or libertarian who hide it, who are in the closet, who try to hide their ideological viewpoints in their teaching and even in their writing, but not Sam. Sam has always been out as a Republican. He embraced the challenge of being the principal source of political diversity for students at Sarah Lawrence College. I visited his classroom. I've seen the skillful way that he guides students through conversations and the way he curates a broad set of readings and experiences. Sam is an excellent teacher. Where is Sam? Oh, there he is. Okay. So wait, I have a little more to say. In October 2018, he published an essay in the New York Times about research that he had conducted on the severe political imbalance among university administrators. Sam found that they are even more lopsided in their political leanings than are the regular faculty. And in order to illustrate this political homogeneity, how it plays out, Sam cited some examples of programming at Sarah Lawrence College. Many of you read this essay. It was a perfectly reasonable essay making a point and backing it up with data and some examples. In response, a contingent of students called for Sam to be ousted from his post. His office was vandalized. There were harassment and intimidation campaigns. His name and reputation were slandered. The university leadership initially neglected to condemn these acts. Instead, the leader of the university aligned herself with the protesters, insinuating that Sam had done something wrong in conducting his research or in publishing an op-ed about it in the New York Times. Sam has met this wall of opposition and slander with dignity and consistency. He simply continues to do what he does best: research, scholarship, and teaching. He loves the academy and wants to improve it, highlighting positive developments, identifying exemplars, and formulating constructive and data-driven approaches to the challenges we face in universities. Responding to unjust treatment with this kind of grace requires a level of courage and moral conviction that we desperately need more of in higher education and in our society more broadly. So now, please join me in congratulating Sam Abrams. Thanks, Sam. Okay.
And next we'll confer the Outstanding Student Award, which is given to a student, undergraduate or graduate, who has made vital and durable contributions to open inquiry, viewpoint diversity, and constructive disagreement in the academy. Coleman Hughes is this year's recipient. Coleman's resume as a public intellectual is quite impressive. The fact he has accomplished so much in just 2 years, while also pursuing an undergraduate degree in philosophy from Columbia University, while also gigging as a professional jazz musician, is nothing short of astounding. To name just a few highlights, he has been a guest on major podcasts, including The Good Fight, The Fifth Column, Exploring Minds, Making Sense, The Glenn Show, and The Reason podcast. He is a columnist at Quillette, and his work has also been published in the New York Times, The Wall Street Journal, The Spectator, National Review, City Journal, and beyond. I aspire to be Coleman, in short. He has roughly 54,000 Twitter followers, and just yesterday, he testified at a House Judiciary Subcommittee hearing, making a case against reparations for slavery. As quickly becomes evident to anyone who reads Coleman's work, he is a brilliant thinker and writer. And what becomes immediately apparent to those of us who have had a chance to listen to him speak or engage with him in conversation is that he's also open, humble, curious, composed, and kind. In these regards, Coleman serves as an exemplar for all of us. Please join me in congratulating Coleman Hughes. And next we get to award the Outstanding Student Group. Our Outstanding Student Group Award recognizes, again, an undergraduate or graduate student group that has made vital and durable contributions to their campus. In fall 2017, a controversial work of art was displayed in a busy corridor at Linn-Benton Community College, which is located in Albany, Oregon, about an hour south of Portland. Everyone on campus seemed to have an opinion about whether the art should or should not be displayed, and at times emotions were hot. A couple students, Brandon Calhoun and Anthony Lusardi, saw opportunity in this controversy. First, they used it as a springboard for a class debate assignment. Second, they invited a broad range of stakeholders for an all-campus conversation with the goal of, quote, accurately representing the viewpoint diversity within our campus community. In a reflection posted on a blog, HxA member and club advisor, Professor Mark Urista, shared, by the time we had our final prep sessions for this large community conversation, All of the students were enthusiastically providing arguments for all sides of the debate. They were also becoming genuine friends. Thus began the Civil Discourse Club. The club aims to promote dialogue that enhances understanding among individuals with diverse viewpoints in an open and respectful environment. They have put on campus debates, group discussions about controversial events and issues, and even town hall meetings with the U.S. Senator. They have facilitated free, intelligent conversation events in the local community, hosted TED speakers and Village Square speakers. They manage a campus civil discourse wall, where each week they pose a question on a whiteboard in the large communal spaces and invite anyone who walks by to engage with the ideas and with each other. They even provide civil discourse training to others. As a testament to their effectiveness, the Civil Discourse Club was recently awarded full chapter status as part of Bridge USA. They are the first and so far only community college branch of the organization. As members of the Civil Discourse graduate, some, like Anthony, transfer to nearby four-year institutions and have demonstrated an eagerness and ability to propagate the club's vision and values at other colleges and universities. I had the opportunity to spend a day at LBCC back in February and met with many members, not just of the club, but of the broader community. The level of commitment, ambition, and innovation demonstrated by these students is extraordinary and a model for students and faculty at other colleges and universities nationwide. Beyond merely advocating for constructive engagement across lines of difference, they show us how to get the hard work done. Congratulations, LBCC Civil Discourse Club.
I think you should do a bit, Mike. I'm not sure. Oh, are you, Mike? Okay. Congratulations. Congratulations. Congratulations.
All of our eyes are open, that's amazing.
Good job. Excellent.
And finally, our Institutional Excellence Award. With our Institutional Excellence Award, we recognize the college or university that has done the most to advance or sustain open inquiry, viewpoint diversity, and constructive disagreement, either on their own campus or beyond. It is my honor to name Claremont McKenna College as this year's recipient. As many of you know, beginning in the 2014-2015 academic school year, there was a marked uptick in protest and unrest in universities across the nation. Over the next few years, they escalated into high-profile demonstrations and clashes, often leading to shutdowns, disinvitations, firings, and resignations. Elite schools were hit the worst, and Claremont McKenna was not immune. What set CMC apart was how the community rose to meet those challenges. In April 2017, within hours after protesters blocked others' access to hear a speaker, both President Hiram Chodesh and Dean Peter Uven released statements affirming the community's right to hear views and to engage with controversial ideas. Then they navigated with incredible grace, transparency, and integrity the aftermath of that protest. This year, CMC launched a new initiative, the Open Academy, to help students develop the intellectual and social skills to express themselves, debate with respect, and listen actively. The scale of this investment is unprecedented, $20 million over 10 years, with multiple institutional components to inform campus culture in deep and enduring ways. Thanks to a significant grant from the Mellon Foundation, professors from different ideological vantage points co-teach courses at CMC, providing students with models for and practice at developing a common understanding of critical issues. By foregrounding the ways freedom of expression, viewpoint diversity, and effective dialogue support students' educational and developmental needs, these commitments from CMC mark a critical inflection point in the broader open inquiry movement. The college has moved the conversation from reaction to intention, Beyond what's wrong to why does it matter for students, for the academic enterprise, and for the country. While I was on the faculty at Harvey Mudd College, I had the pleasure of working with CMC's administration to champion collaboration across the Claremont colleges. It will be my personal and professional delight to continue working together over the coming years to champion transformative models for recentering open inquiry as a cornerstone of our shared academic enterprise. Please join me in welcoming President Hiram Chodosh to the stage and thanking the entire CMC community for leading the way.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, sure. I'll hold the beautiful thing. Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, Deb, for that really generous introduction, and especially for this moving honor on behalf of everyone here from the college. And many congratulations to you and Jonathan and everyone at Heterodox Academy for your leadership. Jonathan, if Deb had been at CMC, she would have never left. It's only because she was at Harvey Mudd that she considered possibly leaving the building. All of us here tonight have learned and been inspired by your commitment to an open academy and to support for our open academy at Claremont McKenna College. And we are so fortunate to have David Brooks tonight, one of the most important voices today of principle and morality on our national page. Heterodoxy, thank you. Heterodoxy is not just a collective or compositional diversity of thought. You're all familiar with the New Yorker cartoon in which the elderly couple is watching the news and the announcer says, well, that was the Republican weather and now for the Democratic weather. That is not heterodoxy. Heterodoxy, in its most powerful form, empowers us as individuals and as groups to hold two or more ostensibly contradictory observations at one time. Like the scientists' competing hypothesis and null hypothesis, or in the face of a false dichotomy, such as free expression and inclusion, to replace either or with an emphatic and. In this spirit, we should explore at least three different perspectives all at once tonight. Yes, first, pride in our accomplishments. Second, even with the great wine, sobriety in reflecting on our formidable challenges. And third, guided collective inspiration for the challenging road ahead. First, yes, pride in the accomplishments of the Heterodox Academy, pride in the awardees. I'm particularly proud of Jonathan Zimmerman. His daughter, Becca, is a CMC 2018 graduate, and you can see how much Jonathan has learned from his daughter. But to the other awardees as well, the courage of Sam Abrams, the scholarship of Keith Whittingham, who appeared at the ATH last year, the creativity of Coleman Hughes, and in particular the leadership of LBCC. I am so inspired that the Heterodox Academy would award and recognize a student group from a community college, probably the most important sector in our higher ed space, and one that gets very, very little attention. And yes, I am proud of what we've achieved at Claremont McKenna. It has been said that every new idea is a bad one until it has an institution. It is also true that every institution, every new institution, is a bad one until it attracts the support and participation of great people. I think this is true for all of us. The original idea of our college, founded mainly by veterans of World War II and funded by the GI Bill, was to create a rationally balanced education to prepare a generation of leaders for the future issues of their time. And the Claremont McKenna Open Academy commitments to free expression, viewpoint diversity, and effective dialogue are designed to do just that. We see these commitments as the programmatic complement to the Chicago principles, but they go beyond that. We're proud of the programs, the institutions we've created, our Athenaeum, the rich array of the world's thought and action leaders we host nearly every night of the academic year. Our student podcast group, Free Food for Thought, who explore the key inflection points between the personal and the professional. In fact, Jonathan was interviewed by them. I think his podcast is probably the most popular one in that entire beautiful series. Our Care Center, which trains all of our students in the integrated social and intellectual skills we need to learn through and across our differences, including the integration of free speech principles in effective dialogue training. Our Model UN program, boasting 4 world championships in 5 years, with innumerable diplomacy awards for its focus on collaboration as the most powerful skill in solving complex problems. And our curriculum and great faculty and special seminars that teach Hayek and Marx in one afternoon, or engage students on how to think and talk about the most wildly diverse perspectives across the political spectrum, such as the University Blacklist, co-taught by Jonathan Shields, professor from CMC who's here tonight, who assigns books by authors from right and left who have been disinvited from US universities and colleges. But especially, we are proud of the individuals, the trustees, the alumni, the donors who have supported these programs, and the faculty, staff, and students who bring them to life. It is they, not I, who deserve the spotlight here tonight, and many of them are here with us representing all of these existing programs that I mentioned, and I'd like our 2 tables 7 and 13, to stand up and to be recognized by this great group. Second, beyond this well-deserved pride for all of us and all of you, we must also reflect with sobriety about the nature of our challenges. Sobriety, because we must all face the negative pregnant in our value statements. Open suggests a worrisome closing. Viewpoint diversity implies the threat of homogeneity. Constructive infers the destructive nature of our disagreements. Heterodoxy points to the risk of unchallenged orthodoxy. But we also need to realize that we can't measure openness by anecdote alone or polemic conclusions in search of self-selected evidence. Just as there are no interdisciplines without disciplines, heterodoxy relies on ideas derived from multiple orthodoxies. And diversity is only as strong as the underlying unity we find through it, the unum in our pluribus. Disagreement, no matter how constructive, is a means to a deeper understanding, finding truth and solving problems. Disagreement is not an end in itself. We are not in higher education, not dedicated to higher learning, only to disagree better. Beyond the necessary adjustments, we also have to ask the bigger questions about the structural forces that are pulling us apart and sorting us into tribes. And yes, Jonathan, affecting the mental health of our country. Globalization, technology, secularization, urbanization, the historic divisions of race, class, gender. We are divided by inequitable constructs of our own making. Our collective failure in meeting basic levels of education for all Americans, itself now a major source of division. How the resulting tumultuous rapids are flooding downstream into our colleges and universities. And yes, out of our colleges and universities into major positions of leadership in our economy and in our polity. And finally, third, with this deeper assessment of our collective success and failures, we have to get to work. The big question at the end of every conference is, what do we do on Monday? We need vision and strategy and plans and a national pedagogy to develop the most powerful centripetal strategies, centripetal educational strategies, those that pull us together to counter these destructive, divisive, centrifugal effects, to meet the demands of full and successful equal participation in a vibrant democracy, in an increasingly disruptive economy, in a culture and national community that all flourish, necessarily flourish, through the creative collision of diverse ideas and experiences. And no matter how sobering this picture may be, the Heterodox Academy, our amazing awardees here tonight, David Brooks, and all of you here who are here to learn and contribute, give us hope as we look into this uncharted future. Hope cannot be said to exist or not exist, wrote Lu Xun, a leading Chinese writer during the Republican period between the two world wars. Hope, he said, is like a road on the earth. At first, there were no roads, but when many people walk in a single direction, a road is made. And so thanks to you all for walking the walk and building the road together. Many congratulations, and thank you very much for this honor.
The award winners we talked about today and celebrated today, I think, are leading the way. And for that, I feel this incredible swell of gratitude, not only to be on this hard journey with you all, but just to be in conversation and to look for the possibilities. And I look out in this room, I look at the speakers on our program, and I see light, I see hope, and thank you.
Okay, we hope you all come back tomorrow. Good night.